We are just letting folks in. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for joining us. This is More Than Our Sickle Cell. This is year 2 of us, of this particular show. It is part of Sickle Cell Foundation of Minnesota's Sickle Smart programming. But what our More Than Our Sickle Cell is something very unique. And the reason that it's unique is because the goal, the mission of this programming is to bring the global community together to recognize that we have more in common than we have different. And that we can talk about sickle cell disease, but we are so much more than just that one diagnosis. There's so many more perspectives and aspects to who we are, how we experience life, how we face our challenges, how we cope with our challenges, how we celebrate our victories. And so when we share those things from a global perspective, we start to learn not just that we have a number of things in common, but we learn that there might be something somebody else it does in a way that sounds like we could learn something from it. Right? So it's not a support group. This really is about just conversation with one another, learning about one another. Typically, my host, Miss B. Batinga, that's my girl. She is the president of Sickle Cell Disease Association of Canada. Her and I work together, partially because she's right there at the border above Minnesota, in case you're wondering where Minnesota is. So so yes, she is not able to be here today. So we have our guest host, Mr. Alvin Merchant. Alvin, would you mind coming off mute and introducing yourself to the crowd?
For sure. Hi, everyone. Ray did the introduction better than I possibly can. So, Alvin Merchant. I see I have some friends in here like Ade and, well, some people that share the same last name. That's all I'll say. And I met Ray through our great friend Biba Tinga in Montreal last year. And if anybody here knows Ray, you understand that if you're not a friend of Ray, then you're just missing out on life. So, right? See, I'm getting nods from Renee.
Or long conversations.
So I'm here to represent the Canadian and also Miss Biba Tinga, who's unavailable to be with us today. But I am a warrior. It's a term that I'm still not used to saying. I'm an old school warrior, so that'll give away the hint of what I'm used to really saying.
It's okay to say it out loud because I think that you just pointed out something really important. If you are from like the bold lips for sickle cell era, you were known, you thought that you defined yourself as you can say it, I'm not.
Sickler. I'm a sickler, right? That's the term I'm used to. That is, listen, don't take the oil of Olay daily skin regimen as what my age actually is. But I am definitely pre bold lips sickle cell era. And yes,
Yes.
yes.
And we now instead of calling ourselves sicklers because we are more than our sickle cell, right?
Yeah.
Now we call ourselves warriors, and not because we are fighting people, but we're fighting a disease that puts us in a position socially against social norms, particularly in the healthcare system. And so, yes, sometimes it feels like we're fighting people, but we're fighting systems that were not built to properly care for conditions like sickle cell disease. And unfortunately, it's human beings in those systems, so we have to educate them along the way, but it really is. We're fighting the disease and the system that doesn't seem to understand us. So we are here and we are going to have a fun conversation. This conversation specifically about adulting with sickle cell. Like, we're not talking about transition. We know transition is tough. We're not talking about peds. We know caregiving and, caring for a child and going through, those educational years. We know that those are still topics, but today we're talking about like, as you begin to mature as an adult, you're not a young adult, right? I'm not saying you're an old adult either. You're a,
you're gonna get me to admit like where I am on that
you're a
spectrum.
mature adult. You're a mature adult. We'll just say that.
You know what? I'm gonna stick with that.
Okay.
I'm gonna stick, I'm gonna stick with
Yeah.
that.
But that comes with knowledge. You've had some lived experiences that many young people haven't. You've seen some changes um, throughout your life in the way that sickle cell is treated, but even how it shows up in your own body, right? It's not like it was when you were a kid. So I want everyone to know this is an open dialogue. In addition to talking with Alvin, we want to be talking with you, and we want you to talk with us. And so, just so that you know, down at the bottom, if you're not familiar with Zoom, there should be either three dots that say more, or you may see an actual button that says reactions. And if you click on that reaction and just give me a thumbs up that you found it, and I'll be able to see it just like that. I want you to use the button, Alvin. It's going to be a fun night with Alvin.
Well,
Perfect.
they're
Perfect.
not they're not ready. They're not ready.
They're not ready. Yeah. No, I thank you, everyone. I'm glad that you found it. That is where you can also see that there's a hand raise button. The reason why that's important is because, listen, in the sickle cell community, we all got something to say. That we can talk in the sickle cell community, that's for sure, and we don't want to talk over one another. So if you wouldn't mind just putting your hands up, or some kind of sign up, so that we can recognize you, and so that you can be part of the conversation. All right, here we go. Alvin, how about, would you mind telling us how old you are? Let's start there.
So I come from the era when I was born that parents were told that their children wouldn't live past 8 years old. They wouldn't live past teenage. They wouldn't live past 21. Just put it this way. There's there My mom threw my 40th birthday party. So that'll just answer that. That's as far as we're gonna
And
go.
it wasn't last month.
It might have been 10 years ago. Um,
Where were you born? Because I think that that's important when we talk about the sickle cell journey. Not only is when you were born important, but also where you were born. And
absolutely.
because sickle cell is global, it's not managed or it's not recognized the same way everywhere. So talk a little bit about that.
So I was born, and I'm gonna say the way that it's supposed to be said, not like the way people who don't come from
Say
the
Ray,
Caribbean.
say Ray.
So it's Saint Kitts and Nevis, not Nevis, for anybody of those that that have been there or heard about it. And
St. Kitts Nevis. Where is that?
Nevis, it's Saint Kitts and Nevis. There's not the extra E,
Nevis. We
but
need
it
to
should
add an
be.
extra E for us Americans, okay? Get a little bit more specific about where that's located.
So you know what? The best thing to do is just say, Mom or Dad, can you please put in if it's the Lesser Antilles, the Greater Antilles, exactly where in the Caribbean it is. But it is in the
The
Caribbean.
Caribbean.
I would say smack dab in the middle, if I'm being.
It's close to St. Thomas and St. Croix, United States Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico.
Ah,
There you
ah.
go.
15 minutes by jet from Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay. See, that's pretty, I think that that's awesome. So that right there in the Caribbean, because we talk about, sickle cell disease in Africa. We talk about sickle cell disease in America. We're not doing a whole lot of talking about sickle cell disease in India, sickle cell disease in the Caribbean, sickle cell disease in South America. We have so much more room to talk about that and to meet our brothers and sisters who are our brothers and sisters by blood, right? But they exist, and so it's important when we think about sickle cell disease that we make sure that we maintain this global perspective, that it's not just in the U.S., y'all.
Ray, when you listen, it wasn't until I started working with Biba to find out about the global perspective of it. And, I knew from a very early age that one of the main reasons, not the only, I won't say it was the only reason that my parents came here, was because of the disease and the diagnosis that I was given back in St. Kitts, right? Um, but it makes sense. and then when you just think about how it's even treated nowadays, like it hurts me. It hurts me to see that like it hasn't progressed as far as you would hope that it would progress,
Right.
right? I know that there's certain countries in the Caribbean that have, their sickle cell program's amazing. Jamaica being one of them because of Graham Sargent and all the work he did back in the day.
Yeah.
But in terms of the rest of the Caribbean, and I would, you know what, and I would say this is like the type of conversation we need to have for those of us who either come from Caribbean descent or may still have some of the old school mentality ways of thinking about our bodies only being as good as its function, right? That is
Yeah.
still things that we have to deal with regardless of the area that we
Okay.
live.
Okay. I think that like this is such a rich conversation, and you know who my eyes keep going to?
Ade.
Ade. Ade. I'm not gonna let you slide without introducing yourself, Ade, because I give you honor. If I see you in the room, I owe you honor, and you have so many stories to tell. Tell us about where you were born, and only if you want. If you want to be cryptic like Alvin about your age, or if you'd like to just share that with us.
Okay. My name is Ade. I live in the UK. I've lived here for 40 years. Over 40 years. I spent the first 30 years of my life in Ghana, where I was born, grew up in, and I'm sort of recently semi-retired, and I try and do my best for sickle cell by belonging to small groups and the like, and trying to. There's a bit of noise in the background here, so that's why I was kind of unwilling to come back.
We
I
can
try to do my best. I'm sort of part of the sickle cell global world, and whenever I can, I attend such meetings. It's a bit late here, but I thought let me at least join in for a while before I go and drink my water and go to bed. Yeah. Okay, so that's me. I met Ray in Canada, actually last year. It was kind of very funny, you know. I turned up in Canada all stocked up with a lot of warm weather clothes to go and find out that it was much warmer than in England. And I got a sickle cell crisis. So I went to a sickle cell conference and I got a sickle cell crisis. And there were people like Alvin who were very helpful, uh, who tried to help me, gave me a lot of advice and everything. But I survived and I came back. And I thank all of them for the warm welcome. And I use the word warm advisedly. And the fact that I got through the program. I hope that we'll meet again, since
We
either
shall.
online or in
Well,
person.
I think
Yeah,
that it is
thank you.
amazing. Now, if you listened really carefully to Ade, Ade said that he spent the first 30 years of his life in Ghana. And then he said he's been in the UK for over 40 years. So y'all do the math. Okay. All right. So that means that we actually do have a warrior giant in our midst. And that's important for so many reasons, because it wasn't until I met someone who was older than the doctors told me my son was expected to live till, that I didn't even realize I wasn't even thinking about him beyond that. So when I meet people who are older than, they say, life expectancy, right? It warms my heart, but it's also an encouragement. And I want especially the kids to see that. I want them to dream big. I want them to think about their future. I want them to want to go to college and and further their education. Not everybody goes to college, but I'm gonna need you to do something with get more training, own your own business, right? So I love, love, love. And yes, Ade, you are a survivor. And we were all very concerned when you went into crisis at the conference. And so, but you are here with us and you made it back to the UK. Alvin being in Canada. Let's see who else hails from far away. wherever you're at. It could be in the US. Where are you from? Would you type it into the chat where you are attending from? We just kind of want to know. And it's fun to see how global we can make this interaction with one another. So Alvin, I touched on something that I'd like us to talk about, and that is education. Tell us what you do for a living. Tell us what your skill sets and, kind of what gets you up out of the bed, at 2 p.m.
Ray, you see, now you're just throwing shots. You know what? I would like to pose the question to any of the warriors in this room. How many of us here are actual morning people? I'm
None.
talking about you are starting. Oh, Renee
None.
just straight. No.
I had to teach the doctors that when I was in the clinic. I said, stop giving people 8 a.m. appointments. They're not coming. That's a missed appointment. I promise you.
You know what? It took me, getting older and recognizing how to put my own schedule together before I dropped I actually think staying in that corporate rat race of trying to be someplace from 9 to 5. Like I tell a lot of people, I was on a lot of opiates when I was doing that. And it's because of the fact that like at that time I was, still living at home. It's an hour and a half from where I work by transit. So then you're waking up. So to get to work for 9, you're waking up at like 6:37. You have to pop a pill because you don't have the time to let your body slowly get up. So you pop a pill to get going in the day. By the time I'm ready to leave the house and my parents can tell you I take real showers and I iron everything I wear.
Real showers as opposed to not real showers, Alvin?
As well, my parents might call it like, the water bill type of showers and the heat behind it. But I've never mastered like this 10-15 minute shower thing that people talk about. I've heard about it. It's this mythical whale that I chase. But no, right? But then by the time I'm done all that, by the time I finish eating, and I'm taking the bus, I'm popping another pill. By the time I get to work, so imagine it's an hour and a half commute. By the time noon comes around, I'm four doses in,
Right.
and I'm on.
You left out the little grease up stuff that you
Oh,
do.
hey. So my dad is trying to put me
Someone's
on.
chiming in
My dad's
on
trying to
your
put-
experience, on your lived experience.
So I tend to moisturize. That's what my dad was trying to say with the grease up stuff, right? So
That's how you moisturize.
you know what I mean? So I live in Canada.
Well,
It's
you know
winter
what
time.
though? Let's be honest. Let's talk about it, because here's the reality for warriors, and particularly warriors who are still doing their best to live well with sickle cell. There is a maintenance plan. You may not like it. Some people may not agree with it, but your maintenance plan is your maintenance plan. Marvin, I see your head nodding. Why don't you come? You're not going to come off mute. Introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself. And yes, tell them how old you are.
Hello, everybody. My name is DJ Marvin Banks. I am a warrior and I'm living with sickle cell. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, I'm living with sickle cell and I'm 54 years of age.
I love it. And talk a little bit about how you learned to have a maintenance plan that keeps you going. Now, not in the fullest of detail, but you've created a life for yourself that works for you and your condition.
Right. Well, my plan is giving all praises to the Most High, first of all, the Most High God.
Absolutely.
I came up with my plan when I was younger. I figured how to found out what works best for me. Sometimes he was saying he has to pop a pill in the morning. Well, I have days like that where I have to pop a pill and then maybe an hour later come back and pop another pill. Well, my plan now is to eat an edible first, marijuana edible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Then I come back and pop a pill. And if that doesn't work, I eat another edible. From this point, I'm a little zooted, of course, but I'm functionable enough to say I can I can move on with my day.
Well, and I think that's what's important. I think it's about function, right?
Yep.
I don't think I think that it doesn't do us well to argue over, is there some level of euphoria or whatever. It comes with the chemicals that are in there. However, we can't lose sight of the fact that you also gain functionality.
Right.
Right. And when
Right.
you're born into pain, which means you're born into pain meds, not by your choice, how you all may experience a quote unquote euphoria is very different than how the rest of us may experience euphoria.
I think one of the things that we will all agree with is, if anybody, like any of the warriors here or the caregivers here, you've seen when that person is truly high. When you're mainlining opiates at the hospital in the IV, like there's really
Absolutely.
like that, like anything below that is not,
It's nothing.
is nothing,
Right.
right? Because you guys have all seen us, like
Yeah.
you, Ray, you've seen your son, my parents have seen me, like when we, like like they'll always tell you stories about where I've fallen asleep with a book in my hand.
Oh yeah.
reading that
Oh
book,
yeah. Fork
and
halfway to your mouth.
or halfway to your mouth, like, you know, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And so to me, like so I was so concerned about this whole opiate addiction thing that at one point in time I took myself to a center up here called the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And as I was going through the process, they instantly shut me down. And they said, as long as you have physical pain, right? And we need to, like we all know, use better words. There's dependency and then there's addiction.
Absolutely.
And then there's quality of life, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you how many milligrams of opiates I take a day, but I maintain. I can do any, like my parents know I'll drive, I'll do anything else. You would not, anybody else would be snowed. They'd be out cold,
100%.
right?
Absolutely.
So
I had
when one of them
surgery
talks
and
about popping an edible,
had to take one pill that it was like 5 milligrams. And I was like, oh my God, how do you all do it? Because it was not an enjoyable experience for me. But
Right.
I also was processing it through, wow, this is like you couldn't even call it a low dose for you all. Knowing how much you all have had to take just to be able to have life, just to have some level of a quality of life. And I think if we continue to try to measure, opioid use through the lens of someone who hasn't been taking opioids in some form since they were born, I think we lose sight of how we measure addiction or dependence. And frankly, and I've had this conversation, people with sickle cell are opioid dependent. You know why? Because the disease is opioid dependent. They're not addicted. They are disease dependent. That needs to be a term, disease dependent, because that's very different.
Right.
well, Ray, I also think it's a community conversation too, because I still think that there is a deep-seated, and like in everybody's own personal community, right? And Ade, this is where I'm going to come to you again to talk about it, is where people refuse to take painkillers because I don't want to become addicted. I don't want to become this. I don't want to become that. And it's like, and it's because we've been told over and over and over again, but you're living in such pain. And people walk around in pain every day thinking, I can't take painkillers because I will become addicted, or just nonsense, right? Like just absolute nonsense.
To me, being addicted, like we know for a fact that us that have sickle cell, we're not addicted mentally, but physically our bodies are addicted. The mental side of it, to me, and this is just my opinion, my brain says, I don't want to be addicted to this. Okay. And then my body says, oh, I'm in pain. I need this. And we're most likely not to be more addicted as the average Joe. Average Joe can take, I know a friend now, he'll take 5 at a time. Well, he don't have sickle cell. He's just a normal Joe. But he's at the point where he's taking more opioids than me. I could take 1 or 2 and 3 or 4 a day and I'm fine.
Now I want to make sure that I say something, because we are a community-based organization and I have to make sure all the disclaimers and everything go out. we are not having this conversation to advocate for misuse
Right.
or if you're using it for coping, right?
Right.
That's the other piece, is that there's a difference between using it for quality of life so that you can function, you can actually go to work, you can get out of the bed, you can actually lead a productive life, versus when you are taking it to cope with the ills of life, right? Whether you have the disease or not. But it's also important to note that they've now done studies that show that individuals with sickle cell have and I mean significantly less overdose rate, dependence rate, addiction rate. And so that gets lost. The fact that, at least here in the US, the Center for Disease Control, CDC, they have opioid guidelines, but they make it clear that the opioid guidelines are not for people with cancer or sickle cell disease. People choose not to see that.
Right.
And so we do have to have those conversations. But I also appreciate when people are not necessarily taking opioids and they are able to find other methods that work for them, including cannabis.
Including yoga and acupuncture.
And I love acupuncture. I love acupuncture. So it's important. I used to tell my patients at the hospital, treating sickle cell pain is like a tossed salad or baking a cake. You need lots of different ingredients in different amounts. And everybody's salad may look a little bit different because they need different amounts. But what you need is more than one ingredient. What concerns me is when opioids is your only go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Have to be other adjunct therapies outside of just opioids. Also, keep in mind that opioids are man-made, right? They are heavily processed narcotics. And so those do take a toll on your organs right alongside sickle cell. So it is important to have more than one solution. Just like any problem in life, you do need to approach it from various angles. So I think that's one of the things, the fact that you all are still here, you all are still functioning, you all are here tonight. That's one of the things I feel like you all have learned, is that it's about, how do I balance this so I can live life?
Ade's had his hand up for a while, and the reason I wanted
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Go ahead, Ade. You can interrupt me anytime you want.
Because Alvin mentioned a point which maybe it's also one of my coping strategies. Okay. So growing up in Ghana, when you are ill and you are in pain, what they give you is Fensic, APC, aspirin, or whatever. Just give you a painkiller. Okay. Now, some of the painkillers are actually not good for you. I grew up before I realized that aspirin was not the best thing because it did something to the blood. But that's really the painkiller around at that time in Ghana. Okay. But our doctor felt that painkillers were also expensive. So when you are ill and you have an infection and they're trying to give you antibiotics to treat the infection so that you feel better, okay, you are now being given a painkiller, which is expensive. Okay. So learning to live with pain means that you want to put your threshold of pain up. Okay. Now, here it is about the opioids. If you are in school and you take a lot of opioids, you doze off if they are strong. So you can't cope with your schoolwork all the time. If you are working, it means that you can't drive or use machinery. So whichever way you like it, you got to balance the pain against whether you want to be drowsy. Okay. And then my sort of tipping point for me, which is really why I sort of went on painkillers, was that I had necrosis of my hip bone. And it was damn painful because it was mixed up with salmonella. And I stayed in the hospital for a very long time. And I was given a painkiller. And I thought that after I got better and I went home, every morning I get up and I still take that painkiller. Okay. And I wasn't quite sure whether I was taking it because I was still in pain or I was taking it because I'd become dependent on it. So I went and had a discussion with my doctor. And I said, hey, what's happening? Every morning, if I don't take this thing, I kind of can't function during the day. And I said, what do you think? Fortunate, I could talk to my doctor. So what do you think? He said, well, really, I can't tell you because I know that you get in pain and everything, but just try and wean yourself off that particular painkiller. Because if you don't, you become totally dependent on it. So from that point, I suppose that the penny dropped for me that if I'm going to get a lot of opioids into my system, I may just be in danger of getting sort of addicted to it. But here is where the problem is. And that problem in England is the stigma. Most people who go to hospital in crisis need early intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that stigma that those people have come for their fix again. So instead of the nurses being sympathetic and actually realizing that, look, we need to do something about this pain before we look at hydrating them and everything, there's just that talk which is bandied on the watch all the time. And of course, there's a race element because within this country, junkies and drug addicts and everything, there's that perception that it's Black people and it's Black people who are also. So one needs to be kind of really balance it and also be careful because if I'm in real pain and I go to a hospital and I need medication immediately at emergency and somebody is messing me around, I may be in pain, but people then start getting violent and that kind of stuff. Okay. And so I try when I'm ill or when I'm in pain, I try to say that why don't I shut the door and cry and do whatever it is. Yeah. Now, my wife doesn't like that. She thinks that I should take my medication. She's always complaining, where's your painkiller and that kind of thing. But all that is part of that coping strategy that I'm talking about in terms of learning to live your life. Okay. Plus, in Africa, the opioids dehydrate you. So now, again, there's that balance of, are you hydrating or, so what I'm saying is that, so for me, the whole issue is that how do we care for the sickle cell patient so that they are confident and comfortable with themselves, so that there's not that kind of stigma attached to it, so that they are not even taught or people don't think that they are malingering. Okay. In secondary school, anytime I went to the hospital, my doctor had come from England, probably never met sickle cell. So I go to the hospital, Mr. Sawyer, why are you here? And I'm in pain. And he just sort of didn't understand because, again, this was in the early 60s, and sickle cell, although it was known or has always been known in our country, had not been properly diagnosed. So yes, pain is an issue, and I hope that the next level of painkillers will not be opioids, but there will be something that may just reduce the dependence on the pain. Okay, so I have my say.
I love what you're saying. And in fact, you're actually, my son is a little bit more like you. Like he would rather not take any pain meds if he can help it. Now, where he differs is he will take them once it gets to a certain level, but it's not his first go-to. He doesn't like the way it makes him feel. He wants to be able to function, but he's like that about all meds. So and I'm so glad that you said that, because that's the beauty of our community, is that we're all different, and how sickle cell shows up is different. They call it your phenotype. We know your genotype is, are you SS, SC, but your phenotype is how it actually shows up and acts in your body. And that varies greatly. And in fact, there's no two that are alike. And they've had studies with twins who both have sickle cell, and it shows up differently in each one. So you also pointed out something else, Ade, that I'd love to get into, and that's education. You said that, those pills can make you tired, and, they can affect, how you think, or, when you're at work and working on machinery and things. It's a little bit of a good transition into education. How did you all decide, what you were going to do in life? I would guess that it was a little bit of a trial and error. Certainly as a young adult, you still have Superman mentality. But how did you kind of decide what path you would take in life?
Well, I think that for me, it was, my sister before me was a warrior, and the one after me was also a warrior, and she died. Okay, but my eldest ones were all fit. Indeed, the fittest was my brother before me, who had a trade, but he was a sports person. Okay, so it's like he was a person that I tried to sort of copy when we were growing up. But I couldn't do all the things that he did, like play football or getting up in the morning, the dawn when there's dew and it's all damp and you are trying to jog along just to make this thing. So earlier on, I realized that a lot of exercise and excessive activity actually gave me a crisis. So my problem was that it wasn't just the cold, it was the fact that anytime I sweat, a lot of sweat and a lot of stuff gave me. So when I went into secondary school, it meant that my teacher, who was also the senior housemaster, who knew of my sickle cell, tried to isolate me from sports. I love swimming. When he sees me in the pool, he gets people to just throw me out. Anytime he sees me doing anything, he says, no, 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 no. I don't want to have to take you to the hospital again and everything. So again, one starts learning a little bit about what do. You want to do society, social things, but at the same time, you are stopped from doing those. So there was a time I became a little bit like a SWAT, because if I'm not going to do those things, I'm not going to go to the sports field and everything. It means that I'm not going to do the hard bits like groundwork, so everybody knows, gives me a chance. So I studied. I mean, that's really all that I did. Studied, went through school, went to university. It wasn't that much of a slog for me. It was cool. And then when I started working, is when in my 20s, that's when I had my challenges in terms of being ill. Okay. In terms of being very, very, very ill. Because for me, it's about now my independence, some money in my pocket, relationships chasing around, and working. Okay. Now, what I did not know was that my work environment was the worst environment for me. And nobody knew about that. Okay. So in 1972, I worked in computers. There were mainframes. You go into a room with a row of computers in Africa, and the temperature in that room was sub-zero. So to cool the machines. So you go in there, you go and do your work 3 hours, you come out into the hot African sun to go and have lunch. And then you come back. And because it was computers, and because computers were new in Africa, it meant that we did not work 9 to 5. It meant that we work outside because you write the programs during the day, and then even you go back to go and test them. And so you leave work at 2 in the morning, and at 7:30, you are expected to be back. Here was I with somebody with sickle cell. And then I love to party. So here was I trying to balance all those things. So I struggled. There was a period of maybe from about, maybe 22 to about 27, I really struggled. I was in and out of hospital, different things, infections, tiredness, exhaustion, everything. Probably wasn't thinking because that was the time that you make yourself. And fortunately, there was also a lot of money coming in. So I was a bit of a show off, but I was always in hospital.
Well,
So there
and
is
I
for
want you,
me,
will you, I just want to make sure that we give everybody a chance to speak, but I
yeah,
want to
okay.
hear what field you ended up going into, what you ended up doing most of
Oh, I
your,
left. So after working in computing, I left. And
okay,
then I went, because I'd studied management, I went to run my own business. That
excellent.
was a travel agency. That was also another problem because
Yeah,
I was always in the air traveling. And
a whole
that's not
other issue.
very, that's also not very good. And those were the days of aircrafts that were not pressurized.
Right. Oh,
So there was a big stuff about people losing their spleen and that kind
yeah,
of thing. So far back, I was already an activist, writing stuff about the fact that it is not the fault of sickle cell people, but it is that the planes should be pressurized.
that's right.
Because we're trying to stop people from traveling if you had. So, yeah. And then afterwards, I just decided, look, I was going to leave Ghana.
I'm
Too
never
many
going to forget
infections.
that day that I'm in the midst of somebody who was in the fight for planes to be
Yeah.
pressurized.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a big deal.
So,
That's
so
a big deal because I
yeah,
remember there was those years that they weren't. I was only here for the tail end of those years, though.
yeah.
A
So
little
I did that, and then in the late 70s, I decided
Okay.
that no, I was going to come here, and it's
Okay.
been relatively better stable for me here, I
Yeah.
must say. So I work as a management consultant, and I
Excellent.
work on Black issues. So it
Excellent.
also ties in with my activism. So I'm also a community activist of sorts, and
Well, you found a way
I
to
do
do
my
what you
caucus.
love. You found a way to do what you love.
Well,
Yeah.
because what it is that if you work for someone, the problem is that you take the choice that, hey, look, I know I'm going to be on my own. I may not make money. I work at my pace,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I'm not going to get a boss who is always on my back trying
Yes.
to tell me when I'm ill that
Yes.
I'm sort of faking it and that kind of thing.
And
And
I love
it
that.
happened a lot.
I love that.
So
You kept your
in
choices.
employment, you have to make that choice. So
Yeah.
you don't have money, but you got a big mouth.
I'm curious to hear from a
Really
couple
does.
of others about what they have chose to do
Yeah.
as well. Marvin, do you want to
Okay.
share a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm a DJ. I have my own business, Banks LLC. And if you look at the background, that's my radio station, online internet radio. It's called Z100thebeat.com. I been DJing for a long time, since the age of about 16, and I'm very successful. So that's what I do. I'm a DJ. And the reason I chose to be a DJ, I had a lot, just like him, I had a sibling that died at the age of 7 from sickle cell. And as I got older, I couldn't stay in school like I wanted to, because I kept getting ill all the time, so as I got older, my oldest brother, he had a drum machine. And I'm like, what's this? He had a guitar, and he used to teach me how to play keynotes and stuff like that. But as I got older, I said, hey, I can't work. What am I supposed to do in life? I always looked at my mom, I always looked at my dad as the working class. But as I got older, I said, wait a minute, it's other stuff you could do to make money besides going to work a 9 to 5. So I said, okay, this is what I like. This is my passion. This is what I'm going to do. Well, as I got older, I found out DJing for me and making beats and selling my beats to people, it was my outing. It was an outing for me because I was in so much pain at times, and I figured I can't work, So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make music. Why I made music? Because that's my outing. That's how I cope with my emotional stress that I have with sickle cell. That's my outing. You know, yeah, people go, you know, they go hunting or do other things. Well, I found my niche. I call it a niche. And I'm just like, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. And I'm very successful with it. So that's my story behind how I cope with sickle cell. You know, and music, we know music has these high alto tones and stuff that relaxes you, like love, like when you know, you got your wife, you got your guy, and then, you know, you put on something romantic. Well, there it is. You know, it has that tone to set the mode. And that's what music does for me.
Alvin, anything to add?
Oh no.
Oh, anybody?
I'm just listening. Listen, like I was gonna ask Addie. So I'm a combination of like Addie and Marvin. Um, my path wasn't fully laid out for me with the very first Atari computer we had. I was lucky. Like when I tell you lucky that my dad worked for Bell Canada and we had a computer in the house before there was even such thing as like color TV. I'm playing. But uh I you know, like all boys, they what's your dad doing? Let me go do what my dad's doing,
Yeah.
right? And he was writing code. And so he found out that there's the cheapest secretary you can ever buy is called a child.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Right? Listen, at least he's honest with it. My mom, I've been begging her
Cheap
for a
labor.
dishwasher. I have to. My mom said I have 3 dishwashers. Why do I need to go buy one? I was like, you see that? That's called child labor. Right? But my dad was just like, oh, you want to see what I'm doing? Here, I'm writing this code. What's
Yeah.
this code? You go ahead and you type it in now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this is the greatest thing since
Yeah, you
sliced
dress
bread.
it up as they want to try.
Yeah, you want to try? And I did it. And I stayed. He got in trouble for keeping me up late writing the code with him, but I was hooked. I was hooked. It was a computer. It was a
Don't give
computer.
away all the parental secrets.
What do you don't give away all the parental secrets? No, I'm still waiting on my allowance from my mom. I've never asked my dad for allowance yet, but my mom still owes me at least
Yes, we know how to
40
bribe
plus years of
you. We know
allowance.
how to do. We have to do those things to keep the ship going.
So I ended up, Ray, like so here's what I was gonna ask Addie and I was gonna ask Marvin. Like I didn't know about your elder siblings, Addie or Marvin. So I'm the oldest of the three. So
Okay.
none of us, and I'm the only one with SS.
Right.
So for me, it was like when Addie was talking about seeing his brother play sports and do all the rest of that, and also for you when it came to like I wanted to do that. Like I wanted
Right.
to be, and when we all like I wanted to play sports or taekwondo or play the drums. I remember asking my dad to play the drums one time, and he was like, "Nah, you need energy for that." Right? So I was always upset that I couldn't be this physical bodied person, right? And I never just took it lying down. And so while Ade was struggling in his 20s, I was struggling in my teens, right? Like, because I wanted to do it every, you know what it's like, you're in high school and all your boys are now like, I was 4 feet 9 inches tall. So let me just get that out there. I was 4 feet 9 all the way up until grade 12. And I had
Right.
my boys and they were taller than me. And the girls wanted to know about my boys. And they just were like, oh, Alvin, you're just a cute little, like they would completely ignore me, but they wanted to know about my boys. And I'm like, but I'm right here. They're like, yeah, little kid, just. So I did things that, to try to be more physical instead of paying attention to my schoolwork. And I'll be honest, it came easy to me, right? It was never like, so maybe that's another reason why like school never was like hard. It was just easy. But here was this thing called playing basketball or soccer or learning how to swim, which I think we attempted for 2 years straight. But like Addie was
Joining the
talking
Boy
about,
Scouts too. Remember?
sorry?
Joining the Boy Scouts.
Oh, the butt?
When you wanted to be a chief Boy Scout.
A chief Boy Scout. Oh,
Chief
like
Boy Scout. Don't you have to stay outside all night?
Yeah.
so I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. So here's the thing, guys. I actually am a chief Boy Scout, and the reason they brought that up is because to get your chief Boy Scout, you have to go through winter gold camping. And
Yep.
Winter.
winter
I did
gold,
that.
Canada. In
yeah,
Canada.
and
In
so
Canada, though, that's
yeah,
like-
it's crazy, but I did it.
Right.
I then spent 6 months in the hospital for doing it.
right. But it was worth it.
You,
It was
the
worth it,
question is,
though.
were you happy you did it?
Right.
I
Like-
still have the sash to this day. It's probably at my parents' house, but I know I have the sash, the Boy Scout sash, the Boy Scout top, everything else like that. So for me, I wanted to do those things. In the end, my path ended up right back at computers anyway, and that's what I do right now. In 2009, my life changed, so I now do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the sickle cell work is something that it wasn't anything that I looked for. It came at me because as Ray can tell you and Biba can tell you and anybody else can tell you, I have a mouth. Ade can also tell you that. And they say I'm well spoken. I don't know what that means. And so it just comes naturally to me to do that.
Right.
But the stuff I love is the computer stuff. And the sickle
Right.
cell to me is just like, I'm just telling you what I do.
Right.
And that's it.
They used to tell me when I was younger, you can't play football, you can't play basketball. I'm 6'2", and I have SS. I'm 6'2" feet. They used to tell me that all the time. But guess what I did? I ignored them and I did it anyway. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, nah, my mom will be concerned, and my dad, of course, but you know what? I said, nope, I'm finna play basketball. When I was a freshman, I played basketball. Yeah, I suffered at the end, but I did it. You know what I'm saying? I played football. I suffered at the end, but I proved to people and myself that I could do anything that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like now I could play basketball. I haven't played in a while, but I could play it,
Yeah, my son taught me that lesson when he was about 6 years old, and I had him on a little league baseball team, and he was getting sick in the sun out on the field.
Mhm.
And I took him off the field one week. The next week he wanted to go back. I let him off and he got sick again. And I went to walk towards him to take him off the field. And the begging in his eyes of, please just let me stay. We ended up having a talk after that because I did let him stay. And my entire parenting style changed from then. Yes, we were cautious. Yes, there were things that were risky. Swimming, let's just use swimming. He loves to swim, so okay, what do we need to do so that you can do that? But because of that, sickle cell isn't what stops you.
Mhm.
It's your thought process about what you need to do. Now, the other thing that I taught him is you can do anything anybody else can do. You might do it differently. You don't have to do it like they did it. You don't have to do it in the same amount of time they do it. But it's not necessarily because you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to raise warriors in an unstoppable way. And I know that, to your point, Marvin, when you said all the things they tell you can't do and you did it anyway, I don't think we'd be where we are if people like you and others who did it anyway didn't exist. They told y'all you couldn't have kids.
Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
count the number of y'all's kids in the room. Y'all can have kids.
Well, Ray,
Sticks for me.
what I was gonna say is it's a perfect time for this topic, right? Is like in the end, adulting, and I also want to put like a slash in the word success, is got to be built by the individual warrior themselves. Like
Yes.
some of us, like I know, some of us, they're comfortable still living at home. Some of us are like, absolutely not. I want to be independent out on my own. Some of us, like, they know what level of life that they are comfortable living. And I think that's in the end what adulting really is. Like if you know what the, not the consequences or the cost, but like this is the reality of being an adult living in, like, I don't know if you guys have heard, but Toronto's one of the most expensive cities in in the world.
New York.
Right? Yeah, it's approaching New York levels. But if you want to live independently and you happen to have sickle cell in Toronto, this is what you're gonna have to do.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
And I think that's
I was just sort of going to chip in about the sort of stuff that you did when you were growing up. Okay.
Let me ask a question real quick.
Wait, Marvin.
Okay, sorry.
Can you let Adi finish?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I had a similar experience. I went to the Boy Scouts. Okay. When I went into secondary school, my classmates were generally 3 or 4 years older than me. I went to secondary school at the age of 9, and it was a boarding school. So it was the first time really that I was away from home, because our secondary schools were boarding schools. And I struggled in the first year. But I wanted to do everything, including swimming, including playing sports, including being a Boy Scout, including being a cadet and all that. Okay. But what happened to me was that because they wouldn't allow me to do sports, it meant that I became a coach for the super athletes. And I sort of became the sports historian amongst the class, because I knew everything that was going on. I was much younger, but I was in cricket, I was the scorer, everything. So I still moved around the sports people, and probably became, I don't know, in New York, in America, the cheerleaders are the women. But in, what do you call it? In Ghana, the supporters union were the men. So I was probably the chief supporter of all the teams. And they came to me for psychological coaching and all this kind of stuff that happens before athletes go onto the field. I was there marking them, coaching them, and that kind of. And so, though I was younger, I started actually in what I'll call a leadership role in terms of leading people on, and I quite adjusted about with that. So I was saying that I also tried all the stuff that I did, but then I realized that really I couldn't do it, and I gave up.
And I don't think that it's the fact that you discover you can't do it. I think that what is fulfilling is that you tried. Right? I'm concerned with the kiddos who don't even try. You don't know your limits until you test them. And that's whether you have sickle cell or you don't. That's whatever life gives you.
Ray,
None
can
of
we
us
hear
know
from,
our limits until we try.
can we
And
hear from some of
so,
the women, Renee? I mean, Ray, I would love to hear is like what Patrina or Renee,
yes, I would
or
love to.
yeah, you know what I mean, to see like what that path was like, or Lauren, like what's it like from that angle or perspective.
If anybody else would like to jump in and comment, of course, the floor is open. Diane, I see your hand.
Yeah, sure. That part, you want to talk about the part of education, but you know what? I'm gonna say my age. I'm 55 because I went through a lot. So I'm heading to 56 this year if I live to July.
You will. We're gonna speak that into existence.
Yeah, but my part when it came to education, because I grew up when they didn't know much about sickle cell. And so I had an older sister and a younger sister. I was in the middle. And education wise, they put me in a corner and they spent all their time and the money on the ones who weren't getting sick. So in my life, I grew up saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're gonna die there, you're gonna die here. So my path was different. Even though I fought for my education, I did went to college and stuff, but I took a different route. I just got a good job, got a government job, and I sit in it, and that's it.
Absolutely.
But growing up, my family, once the doctor said she can't do this, she couldn't do it. So my other siblings were educated, and they all went on to do great things, but I was in the middle that couldn't do anything.
Well, and you grew up in an era that many grew up in, and the doctors told you all the things you couldn't do.
Yes, and my parents took that to heart.
And you made it out of that, thankfully. But what we're now dealing with is a generation of warriors who were told they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. And here we are revisiting now them in their young adult years or early adult years saying, hey, you may not be able to, but guess what? You may be able to, but you won't know unless you try. Right?
But you know what? And that's
pressure.
That's a nice part now with the younger generation. They can choose careers that they can work for themselves. They don't have to work for anyone. They can choose
Yeah.
different paths,
Yes.
knowing that they have this illness. So, there's so much that is open to them
Yes.
that they can do. But with us, we didn't have it. It was
I
chosen
hear you.
for us. Yeah.
I hear you. Katrina, I see your hand too. Please share. And sorry if I said your name wrong.
Everyone, I'm Katrina. I just turned 50 in December, and, and I was raised in Jamaica, where they were doing stuff. There wasn't a lot being done. But my mom, okay, I'm the egg that didn't pretend, like, didn't want to be an egg, because she was very protective, and I would sneak out and do my own thing and then scream later because I'm in pain. They try to stop me from doing things. I would go to the river, come home, and sick, sort of thing. Education wise, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to work for the government. I didn't care where, I didn't care what I was going to do, because I learned after coming here, even from being in Jamaica, that if I was in the government, that was one place that they couldn't fire you for being sick. I didn't know where I got that from, but that was my philosophy throughout the whole thing, because I was always being fired at every job I took. And then I'm like, if I get in the government, they can't get rid of me, sort of thing. Well, that easy. Now they have to figure some way other than my health. I'm on disability now, which I'm not. I fought it at first. I didn't want to go off because I wanted to be at work. I wanted to be independent. But the whole thing is, I realized I was better at home, taking care of myself and my daughter, being as healthy as I can and let them pay for it, instead of me being out there struggling like I was before and can't make ends meet.
Yeah.
So that's how I worked around being at home.
I hear.
What I do, I have a lot of hobbies. So I try to not overwhelm myself with my hobbies, but I do, because I'm an artist. So I'm dabbling in different things, trying to learn different things. I have the thousands of unfinished work because I don't stick with it. So
You're an
I was very
explorer. You like to explore variety.
Yes, I like to try different things, but I always go back to it though. I mean, some stuff get done, but some
Do you
I just
currently live in Jamaica?
no, I'm in Canada.
Okay, you're in Canada. Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot better being here than there, because there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done.
Okay.
Like I've been talking to a few people, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done down there. So
Yeah.
it's I mean, when I travel, when I go back, I know I found out what was it, about 4 years ago, that my chart was still active at the hospital I was born in. I didn't know that.
Wow.
So when I went in, I was ill, and I went in, they pulled my chart and they knew exactly what to do. But I'm like, it's not the same for everybody. I went back to the same hospital where I was born, right? I don't know. I just take it one day at a time. I just try to
Well, and and I still say kudos to you, because the journey is a journey of discovery, and it's also a journey of seasons. You may have a season in your life that you can, and a season in your life that you can't. And that has to be okay, because guess what? It's the norm for the sickle cell community. There you can have a stretch that goes really well, and then you can have a stretch that goes really bad. But it's in whatever stretch you're in that you learn about managing your disease. Chris, I see your hand. What would you like to share?
I just been listening in to all the different journeys. Mine is a lot like your journeys. Unfortunately, the thing was, I was like some of you, where I wanted to mimic my older brother and do all things that he could do, but he was really good at sports, and I was terrible. I mean, terrible. Now, I managed to play high school basketball one year, but I'm 6'8" now, and you would automatically assume I'll play basketball.
Wow.
That's in the world. It's not going to happen.
Where are you located?
I'm in Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay.
It's not gonna happen.
I'll be in your state in a couple weeks.
A couple weeks. So you okay. So anyway, I've worked, let's see, I worked in everything, and like others, I got fired because I couldn't be at work, or I would quit because I couldn't be there because I was sick all the time. So let's see. So I stopped working. I had to stop working in 2004 is when I stopped. And then in 2011, I had a stem cell transplant. But the whole time, through the whole process, I was in computers. So now I'm in infrastructure management, and so I deal with computers on a daily basis.
Wow.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm learning. Actually, right now I'm going through my master's in cybersecurity. So I'm just trying to get situated enough to where I can move into my own space, to where I can be my own company, doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Not having to work all these other things around me.
Well, it's a shame we live in a country where you can't.
I'm
just
definitely proud
to live in.
to hear about all the great things and all the people on this chat today, because you know we're warriors, and that's what people need to realize, and the young people need to realize it too, is that we can make it on our own if we try.
That's right.
We can do it. It may be hard. We're gonna have some of them blocks. We'll have some problems, some issues, but if we really want to do it, we can. There's nothing stopping.
You all have proven that over and over and over and over again. The fact that after a long hospital stay, you get back on that horse and start riding, you get out. Like, you all are the most resilient individuals that I've ever seen in my life. And you all give me the heart. You give me you empower me. I stand up for y'all because I see the way y'all stand up for yourselves. So I know we're over time. I want to make sure I respect everybody's time. Does anybody want to end with anything? And that means your ending is about 30 seconds. Anybody?
I got one.
All right.
Let's keep it moving. To all the warriors out there, we're gonna keep going until it's time.
That's right.
All right. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna stay positive, and we're gonna keep it moving.
That's right. And we're gonna teach the younger warriors coming up behind you so that they can learn how to live well with sickle cell. And we're all in this together.
Yep.
All right. I appreciate all of you that came. Just quick that let you all know, our empowerment circle is on the last Wednesday of every month. That means this month it's on the 27th. On the 27th. And then our next, more than our sickle cell, we do it quarterly, March, April, is in June.
Okay.
All right. We hope that you all will come back. The same way that you registered, please follow us on Eventbrite so you'll know when we have events that are coming up. Some of you I've seen before, so thank you for coming. To the new folks, I'm so glad to see you. So tonight was a good night. Ade, it's past your bedtime. I know that you